Good evening. Welcome to the Pullman City Council meeting for this Tuesday, February 15th. Nice to have you here. And first of all, Dee, please take roll.
Mayor Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Benjamin.
Present.
Councilmember Dubin.
Present.
Councilmember Guido.
Here.
Councilmember McCall.
Here.
Councilmember Parks.
Here.
Councilmember Weller. Councilmember Wright.
Here.
Nathan Weller notified us he could not be here tonight. Do I hear a motion to excuse?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Under announcements tonight, that's one of those occasions when you take a look at some of the news stories that come out, and they're usually on the negative side. So we've got a couple of positive stories I want to talk about tonight. And one, a couple of weeks ago, we received a beautiful plaque called the Outstanding Performance Award, which we're presenting tonight to Trevor Cook, who is our supervisor of the wastewater treatment plant, because the Department of Ecology gave us the Outstanding Performance Award for 2020, recognized exemplary effort and work accomplished by the City of Pullman and the dedicated team at the Pullman Wastewater Treatment Plant. And I wanted Trevor to be here tonight. Let me come down there and I'll present it to you.
Okay.
Because normally these kinds of stories, you're always hearing about, well, something overflowed. Not here, elsewhere. But I wanted to make sure that you got the plaque. And Trevor, why don't you tell the group some of the things that have been accomplished there at our wastewater treatment plant. Okay? Thank you.
Well, I'm Trevor Cook, the supervisor at the wastewater treatment plant. We're an activated sludge plant, and we treat about 3 million gallons of water a day. We have 3 permits we operate with. We have the NPDES permit, which is what this award is for. We also have a biosolids permit and an air permit. I'll give you a little history of how we got to where we're at with this award. In the early 2000s, it became apparent that the growth in the city had led the plant needing upgrades to meet the challenges for the future. To meet these challenges, public works staff, consultants worked together to evaluate what would be needed to meet these challenges. Coupled with a commitment from the City Council, 3 major projects were completed. In 2010, we completed the digester project, which more than doubled our digestion capacity and really cleaned up the internal workings of the plant. In 2012, we completed the aeration basin and secondary clarifier projects, which greatly increased our ability to treat waste, so we weren't overloaded any longer. And then in 2019, the UV project was completed, which eliminated harmful chlorine byproducts from the wastewater treatment plant's effluent. Currently, the wastewater treatment plant has 5 operators, 1 mechanic, and 1 lab person. Every one of them is dedicated to producing the highest quality effluent, exceeding the requirements of the permit that we have from the Washington State Department of Ecology. The staff has made the commitment to performance through continued education, response to wastewater treatment plant emergencies day or night, attention to detail, the meticulous maintenance of the property and equipment, and keeping the citizens of Pullman and the downstream users in mind while they're doing these tasks. The staff and myself appreciate the recognition of our efforts from the city and state, and we look forward to continue our efforts to protect the public health and environment for the citizens of Pullman and Washington. And again, thank you guys for recognizing us for that.
And thank you for the excellent work that's going on at the wastewater treatment plant.
Absolutely. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Another announcement tonight came in as an email from a person who was stayed at one of our hotels here in town and happened to witness our police officers in action. And when you hear elsewhere, and it's all going on all across the nation, I thought this is one of those kind of stories that I would like to share with the general public tonight. And the letter came in, and I won't use the person's name right now, but it says, "Dear sir, my husband and I stayed at a Pullman hotel," I'm not going to mention which hotel, "this last Thursday evening, February 10th. Although the hotel was mostly quiet, a gentleman in a room across the hall from us had some kind of an episode. He screamed for at least 3 hours. The Pullman Police Department showed up, and I was dumbfounded by their patience, their kindness, their de-escalation strategies. Michael was spoken to calmly, offered water, was reassured that they were there to help, and even when he became more and more agitated and aggressive, they did not match him in their behavior. I was incredibly impressed and proud of your officers. I say this as a citizen and as a daughter of a San Francisco police officer. So please let your officers know how grateful I am for their commitment to public safety in such a volatile social climate." And the officers involved were Sergeant Alex Gordon, Officer Doug Anderson, and Officer Jared Aubertine. So wanted to make sure the public knew about one of those kind of stories that, again, usually behind the scenes, people don't know about it, all they hear about is some other things, and the great work of our Pullman Police Department, Fire Department, our city staff in general. So we just want to thank our officers for the great job they did. Did you know the Pullman Police Department is also happy to provide safety-related presentations for organizations, businesses, clubs, and classrooms? And if your group is interested in scheduling a public program, please call 334-0802. Washington State University's VTUB, Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, will be providing free tax preparation assistance at Neal Public Library most Saturdays from 12 until 4 from February 5th through April 2nd. For more information, you can just visit the city's webpage. Monthly utility shutoffs. The shutoff this month is now taking place, and that's for the late fees that have been past due. The city would like to assist our customers through this challenging time, and we have presented a number of different presentations about that, including help from the Community Action Center. And you can call the Community Action Center at 509-334-9147 to have any kind of help with those water shutoffs. We also put out a news story this past week. The City of Pullman is recruiting volunteers to fill vacancies on several boards, including the Planning Commission, Lawson Gardens Committee, Civil Service Commission, and the Parks and Recreation Commission. And you can find a little bit more details on that at our city website. And finally, the Neal Public Library in Pullman is hosting a discussion with author Joshua Powell tomorrow, 7 o'clock. Powell will discuss his book, The Pacific Crest Trail. The book conveys the beauty of the 2,600-mile wilderness hike from Mexico to Canada. And again, if you'd like to attend this virtual event, just go to the library website. And those are the announcements tonight. Under the next appointment item on your agenda is a confirmation actually of a reappointment. This reappointment is for Ned Warnick. Many of you know him as an architect here in this town, and he's served very well on the Historic Preservation Commission, and I'm recommending his reappointment. And at this point, I'd like to have confirmation from the council. Do I have a motion on that?
Move to confirm. Second.
Move and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much for that. We now move to two presentations tonight. First one is the Palouse Basin Aquifer Committee Community Survey. And Paul Kimmel is here. He wears multiple hats, one with the Avista Corporation, but also a member of the Palouse Basin Aquifer Committee. So thank you, Paul, for being here.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, thank you for tonight. Not sure what I do to get my slides up. Here, magically happens. I think it's somebody behind the curtain. Thank you. Again, Paul Kimmel, I serve as a Latah County representative to the Palouse Basin Aquifer Committee, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and thank you. You have packets in front of you. One is The attachment is the full Palouse Basin Awareness Survey, so take some time, go through that. I will tell you that the comments, the verbatim comments, are really rich and insightful. So tonight, we're just going to blow through a few slides and some kind of high-level findings. Again, a little bit about that. PBAC is a multi-jurisdictional organization consisting of the 2 cities, the 2 counties, the 2 universities, and then we have ex officio membership from both the Department of Ecology as well as the Idaho Department of Water Resources. Eileen, I got the slide in for you. Just a little bit about the geology. And one of the challenges we have, and I'm sure you've heard this before from us, is the complicated geology that lies beneath us, where we source all of our groundwater. It is literally a layer upon layer of heavy basalts. And in between those layers are some sediments, and sometimes in those sediments are water deposits, and that's where we source all of our water. So again, you can see from this, oh, I did that wrong. Maybe a laser. Anyway, you can see the straws going down. You can see the location of the wells. We're looking essentially from my left is west, to my right is east. So from Moscow out to the Elks Golf Course, you can see where Moscow has their wells, the University of Idaho, Pullman and WSU lie on this side, and you can see the deepest well within our region is the WSU well number 7. So again, they go deep. The WSU well is over 2,000 feet deep. So, and stop with any questions along the way. Again, what we do is we collect data, we fund groundwater research, we supply our community with great information, updates, and some of the strategies for long-term water supply. And more recently, we are really trying to up our community engagement game. Current projects right now, we have our water modeling project that is nearly complete with WSU, which will help us better inform us about the aquifer's behavior and characteristics. Again, with all the basalt, it's really difficult to model storativity, how much water is actually in there, how it behaves, whether we get recharge. So again, WSU has updated a model that we have used since roughly the 1990s. So we're excited to see that. It's more three-dimensional and hopefully more interactive for us. Tonight I'll share a little bit about our Palouse Basin poll and some of the findings and some of the strategies that we're developing around how we engage with the public on our water situation. Also in your packets is a single sheet on a Palouse Basin revisioning tool. And again, a lot of the research that we fund is through our universities. This is a master's thesis project provided by Lauren Kirkpatrick. And it's really kind of an interesting way to portray natural resource information and decision-making from a visual perspective. So if you have a minute, just snap on that QR code and take that survey. It's really interesting, the work she is doing. So again, from that, we'll hopefully learn how to communicate better with our public. And then we're still finishing up our source water tracing. So again, we still don't know what we don't know, and one of those things is, are we getting recharge in that lower aquifer? So we had some seismology projects over on the front range of the Moscow Mountain to kind of understand, are we actually getting recharge through those sediment, through that granite and into the basalt layer. So, and then a little bit about the water supply alternative. Your three representatives on PBAC, Councilmember McCall, Sean Coates, as well as Kara Harley, are great supporters of the work we are doing, and this one is huge. As we look at new water supplies, which we will need, it's important that we identify those really strategically, thoughtfully. So Thursday we have a big workshop where we'll talk about that decision matrix and how we land on the preferred alternative or set of alternatives. So it's a wicked problem, but you know, the basin has some wicked smart people. We'll figure it out. We also launched last year a stakeholder engagement group, and if there's any interest in this room as well as those viewing, we would certainly welcome you to join that. And that was intentional to just get better feedback from the public as we move through water supply alternatives and projects, et cetera. We need that feedback. We don't want to operate in a vacuum. So the poll tonight, I'll just briefly share, was really to gain understanding what our Basin community members understand about our water situation, how they get information, how we can better improve how that information gets pushed out, and then really kind of work on this strategy and brand we're calling Conserve, Stabilize, and Thrive. Conserve water, stabilize our aquifer, and still thrive our communities. The poll was conducted last fall for about 30 days. We used a Google platform for the polling, and we have an intern at PBAC, Ashley Ford, who helped design that and really carried that through for us. We had a total of 306 valid respondents, so we feel that it's statistically valid. Good representation across the basin, primarily Moscow Pullman residents, but a few in the outlying communities, Latah County as well, Palouse and a few others. Good mix of demographics and age representation in our respondents, and not surprisingly, more females respond to a poll than males. Figure that. Employment, a lot of employed people responded as well, and a very well-educated region, as you might suspect. How people are getting their water information, and this is kind of valuable for the city as you portray and display information on your website about water and anything else. A lot of people do check out your website. So again, that's city information. A lot of people get their water information that way. Newspaper is still a traditional source of information, but we're really finding more people engaging at the social media level. Questions about are they even aware of PBAC? And by and large, most people were aware of the work we do and the organization, and the fact that they knew where we source our water supply, groundwater. So good information there. Good awareness about groundwater situation, that we still are in a declining aquifer situation. So again, good validation there. And then we migrated into a series of questions on conservation, which I believe are really, really rich and valuable to us. Most people think that they use an average amount or below average amount of water in our basin, which is good. I mean, they think about how they use water. So good. And I think some of the pumping numbers that we will present to PBAC on Thursday will tell us and show us that actually our per capita use of water continues to go down. So we are shrinking the amount of water our residents use on a per capita basis. So great there. Water conservation programs. Is water conservation important? Yes. So by and large, yes, it is important. The opportunity here is down in the lower left-hand corner is, do you participate in these programs? And about a third said yes, about a third said no, but I'm interested, and a third said no. So roughly 2/3, there's opportunity there to engage more water conservation programs. And then some of the verbatims that you can spend time on. There's about 10 pages of verbatim comments. Again, people want to know more information, how much is left. Our situation could be urgent, but we're just not sure. We need to act collectively, and I think we are. I think the work we are currently doing at PBAC demonstrates that urgency and the fact that we collaborate so well. Much like our airport board, our Palouse Basin Aquifer Committee is a very collaborative effort across the state line. And as you know, water knows no boundaries, political boundaries don't care, but for us living on the surface, those political boundaries can get a little complicated, especially in water law. Others like, hey, we have enough water, and that's true. We have identified enough water to provide our needs for the foreseeable future. We just have to figure out how to capture it, how to manage it. So good information. I mean, and these are comments from our citizens. We're really encouraged about the level of familiarity and understanding. There's a fair amount of concern about new development. And I think, again, this is an opportunity where our communities can engage with our developers and builders about ways they can address and mitigate for water use. Not all new development has to have expansive yards. Again, the program's about Y-scaping, reducing that green footprint in a property. I think there's ways to do it, and we've talked with water conservation experts about what those look like, and there are some model ordinances out there that are not punitive, but help us get to that goal of water conservation. Again, concerns about the declining aquifer, but people still will come here. I mean, we see growth happening both in Pullman and Moscow. So again, keeping this a priority at the city level will be imperative for all of you. And lots of information. Send me more information on water conservation. They want to know what the programs are here. So I would say, again, this is opportunity for you to really promote your programs. And by and large, people appreciate the work we do, which is always good to hear. So again, visit our website, palousebasin.org. With that, I would stand for any questions, Mayor.
Any questions or comments? Eileen, since you serve on that committee?
This has been a joy to be involved in. There is an unreal amount of research going on. Some of the presentations that we've had from both graduate students and postdocs has been just astounding. I know more about non-organic carbon than I ever thought I would. A lot of it's highly technical work. A lot of it's field work, people out there slogging around out in difficult conditions. There's been quite a few surveys done. We did one at both the Latah County Fair and the Whitman County Fair. It's been 3 years ago now. It was pre-COVID. And where, an online poll, people kind of self-select to be on that. But at Whitman County and Latah County, we actually went out with a tablet and went out and approached people that were walking by or were walking around the fairgrounds. We're going over to the sheep pen and we're saying, take this water survey for us. So we get sort of a different data set and a different response from that. So we've really done, a tremendous amount of effort to get as much feedback from the community. Some of the answers are really startling and kind of let us know where our gaps are. That's why I had Paul show the map. I think we had to put that on the wall somewhere, like they have over in the building in Moscow. I think we had to put an application on there because we had so many people say, well, I don't have to worry about this. I have my own well. And that tells us we have a knowledge gap that we need to address. So the amount of work that PBAC has done, on Thursday, we're going to have that very exciting workshop on our alternatives and really break it down. We're looking at 3 hours of good hard work. And we'll be looking forward to reporting back to you on this. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Okay, any other comments? Not? Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you, Mayor.
We appreciate it. Thanks for the update from PBAC and all the good work you're doing. Next comes another report. This comes from Joanna Bailey, our director of the Neal Public Library, for the annual report.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for the opportunity to come before you tonight to tell you what happened in 2020 at Neal Public Library. Let me first say that is not a typo. I am reporting on 2020. Normally, I like to bring an annual report to you very early in the new year, but 2020 was a significant challenge for the library to get through, and in 2021, we were still very much focused on recovery. So I appreciate your patience in getting me here tonight, but I'm happy to present the 2020 report. So as I alluded to, the pandemic created unprecedented challenges and disruptions for the library service. The state's pandemic response did not include libraries as essential service. And so Neal Public Library closed its building on March 16th and transitioned to remote service with just 2 out of 28 staff working. The 2 staff worked to serve the public online and by telephone. As the state's recovery moved forward, library personnel and department services were cautiously phased in. By the end of the year, staffing had been restored to 36%, with 15 casual employees waiting for callback. It was a significant challenge to align our core elements of our, what is typically a shared resource model of service with public health, to align that with public health directives and guidance. We spent years as an industry positioning libraries to be the place that people go, where computers are available and one-on-one help is given directly to patrons. We have Wi-Fi computers. We have early learning toys that children learn through play. So we've worked really hard to make the library your place to come and stay and visit. That model did not work at all in the pandemic. And so we had to fundamentally restructure our spaces in order to discourage and in some cases eliminate those resources. So this challenge was both a practical challenge and a philosophical challenge. How do we as a library, as a public library, continue to provide that valued service to our taxpayers when so much of our service has been turned on its head? So using a continuous improvement mindset, staff developed new ways to serve our community remotely. We expanded our digital resource offerings. We made Wi-Fi accessible from our parking lots. We created library accounts for new users remotely, and we offered both educational and entertainment opportunities that could be enjoyed from home. So here's some examples of the innovation and the continuous improvement mindset. These are some of the results. The picture on the far right is my work from home office. But one of the examples of how we continue to move forward is in the way we created library accounts. So I mentioned that we were able to issue cards remotely. That was typically an in-person process that we had to really quickly pivot to become remote. And these accounts had full access to all of the library's online services and in just very limited loaning of physical items. But the accounts were then converted to permanent accounts once the cardholder's identity could be confirmed through curbside service. So we actually served 395 residents that we would not normally have been able to serve because we transitioned that service to be remote. The user feedback was overwhelmingly positive. In nearly all of these transactions, we had people thanking us and saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that you were able to change your process to allow me access because your services are valued." I want to thank Mayor Johnson for saying very clearly how important early literacy is during a pandemic. Thank you for pivoting in the midst of everything that you were handling to provide online story times to our community. On the right-hand side, that's a picture of our youth service librarian who also was providing online story times at home, so that even though the library building was physically shuttered, that that early literacy could still continue in people's homes. We also spent quite a bit of time providing remote tutorials for people, explaining to them how to use our services. There was the topic of misinformation was a big topic, and so we spent time teaching patrons how do you evaluate whether a source is credible. So that was a big service that we provided. When the building closed, our online services, the usage surged. So you can see with our downloadable books, 16% increase on those downloadable books. LinkedIn Learning, people did a lot of at-home learning, a lot of self-directed learning, 62% increase in usage on that database. Thanks to the funding from the Friends of Neal Public Library, we debuted Canopy, which is a streaming movie platform. It is different than Netflix in that it really focuses on independent film and Criterion Collection. It also has a Canopy for Kids component, and where the adult content was limited to 10 plays per month, the canopy for kids was unlimited use. So if they wanted to watch Sesame Street, an episode of Sesame Street, they could watch it again and again and again. So 352 patrons streamed nearly 7,000 movies. It's amazing. And then people were at home more. They were spending more time with their appliances. They were realizing maybe their dishwasher didn't work very well. They went to Consumer Reports to research those products. So 72% increase in Consumer Reports. So I mentioned curbside service earlier. This was a novel process for the library, for all libraries. We used actually the restaurant model as a starting point. And then we put our heads together and we dug into the process to determine how can we make this more user-friendly for our patrons and more sustainable on the staff side. So that process required many iterations to simplify complexities to ensure the process remained supportable. So we were able to offer curbside in 2020 for 6 months, from June through December. And patrons used curbside service 6,339 times to borrow a little more than 43,000 items. It was an enormous resource for the community, and it was what am I trying to say? It lifted our hearts because we would come out to deliver these Ziploc bags of materials to people, and everybody was just smizing through all of our masks. We're all just smiling with our eyes at each other. It was really an important way for people to be able to access books and movies and to do that safely. The other part of curbside service is that we had to create a process for mitigating transmission as items came back into the building. That was a very staff-intensive process. It included steps to quarantine items when they first came back, and that was a 72-hour quarantine. Then to clean every item, to sanitize it, and then to reshelve it. All of that before it could go back out again. So the process was inherently labor-intensive, and that made scaling difficult when staffing levels were low. We employed staggered shifts, and we continued to remanage the expectations of both staff and patrons to help mitigate the impact from repetitive motions and to more effectively distribute the workload. The laborious process was modified late in the year as new science became available and the state was able to reduce its quarantining and cleaning requirements. And so we were able to then revise our process. So you can see the yellow circles there. That is the flow for curbside service. Staff pulled the items. We checked them out to a patron account. We bagged them. We delivered them through contactless delivery. We took items back and collected them from the book drop returns. We did our mitigation process, and then we put them back out on the shelf. So that is the curbside process. So in-person library programs were adapted to be portable learning experiences, and the grab-and-go library programs, this is how we did it. We had programs for children's, tweens, and teens and adults. These grab-and-go bags were funded exclusively through the Friends of Neal Public Library, and they focused on storytime themes and STEAM themes, STEAM kits. We also had self-care bags for teens, and we had a couple of teens email us and say, "Wow, thank you for seeing us. Thank you for remembering that we are suffering too, and this is hard on us too." Activity bags also provided screen-free entertainment. All of us were watching our screens a whole lot more than usual. And so having screen-free, independent activities were really important. And we heard from parents and caregivers who said, oh, thank you for just giving us 15 minutes of time where we could just breathe for a moment for ourselves. So the other thing I want to mention is, in addition to supporting our community through providing funding for these bags, the Friends also supported our local merchants. They purchased and distributed gift certificates that went into these grab-and-go bags so that the businesses could also stay afloat. And I want to just commend the Friends for having that 360 view of the impact of the pandemic. So from October through December, 1,450 activity bags were distributed to patrons. Speaking of the Friends and of our community, we are so grateful for their support. Hearing that a significant portion of the library's budget was frozen, the Friends of Neal Public Library rallied and raised $98,389 to purchase new books, movies, and to fund the grab-and-go bags. And then, Key Club member Marissa Carper led a focused outreach to middle school and high schoolers. And students, you can see pictures here, students wrote notes, letters to the library, thanking us for providing service, sharing why library service was important to them. And these messages, we had smiles on our faces because of these messages. They warmed our hearts in the darkest of days. In total, the Friends purchased 2,125 new items, new materials for patrons to borrow. So what did patrons do with the library materials? Well, they held more family movie nights. That became a real thing, and they would gather together with a DVD from the library, and they would share that experience. They spent more time reading to their children. They borrowed nonfiction books to help make sense of what was going on in the world. And they also researched methods of self-care. And then they cooked a lot. There was hardly a time when the new cookbooks were on the shelf because they were borrowing and cooking so much. And they also found moments of relief and levity in works of fiction. So that's the role that your library provided to the community. And then the Pullman Fortnightly group reached out and said, hey, our 125th anniversary is here, and we would love to acknowledge the importance of books. Do you have any ideas? And I said, yeah, actually, our vinyl wrap that was in place over 15 years ago is peeling, and it's turned brown in the weather, and is that of interest to you? And they loved that idea. And so we, thanks to their funding, we put a new vinyl wrap on the outdoor book drop. This is the book drop facing Olson Street. And the new image portrays a very welcoming stack of books. And these are titles that were suggested to the library from the community. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Questions or comments? And I know, Ann, that you get to be an ex officio member over there, and I know we're all proud of the library, and I imagine you are especially so.
Indeed. Thank you, Mayor. I joined the board, I think, right in 2020. So I was learning everything and then seeing the progression of what the library did and how they handled things throughout. Just the, like Joanna said, the continuous improvement mindset. It wasn't, well, we can't do this. It's like, how can we do this? And I think that it really pointed to the awareness of what a community center the library really is, not just for checking out books, but for being there and recognizing and taking care of people in times of need. And I'm just so proud. I am proud of the library, the staff. Joanna's leadership has been just unbelievable. And just the flexibility and dedication of Joanna and the staff and the Friends of the Neal Public Library. It truly is an example of community working together to help each other. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Parks. I want to just say that one person alone cannot do this. I have the privilege of leading an inspired team, so this is collective.
Okay. Megan Guido.
So I just want to echo what Ann is saying. It's so heartwarming to hear from you, and I just got a kick out of reading your annual report because it made me smile that, you know, that people were coming together and that this is really a valuable resource to our community. And the work of the Friends, I mean, it's just phenomenal in terms of the money it raised and how it just kind of coalesced and that group came together to really help along with your staff, and kudos.
Thank you.
All right. Francis.
Thank you. Thank you again for the work that you and the staff do for our community. The gateway to literacy and the touch points that you provided for our community is very critical, and I appreciate just the passion that you have to want to see all of us have a love for books, a love for reading, a love for literature. I really enjoyed attending the Friends of the Library year annual meeting and learning about the gateway that graphic novels have, because I've always seen graphic novels as in the comic book realm, as opposed to seeing that as a gateway to get our youth interested in literacy and reading, and that's the way to step them in. And so just those concepts, I appreciate that you're always looking for ways to be able to reach our community and then make a difference in them, and especially when you think about just the impact that literacy has with lifelong learning and where people go and how important that literacy piece is. So thank you.
Thank you.
And Joanna will be back with us in just a couple of minutes after we have our consent agenda. That's a little promo here. So with that, our next item is the consent agenda. These items are considered routine in nature. Council's had a chance to study them over ahead of time. Do I hear a motion to read by title only?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, Laura McAloon, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Your consent agenda consists of a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 25, 2022, and approve them as submitted. A motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the special meeting of February 5, 2022, and approve them as submitted. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable electronic funds transfer numbered 120-12021, totaling $9,675.05. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable electronic funds transfer numbered 101-202022, totaling $55,711.99. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 105614 through 105665, totaling $1,558,814.24. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 105666 through 105675, electronic transfers 47, 48, and 820 through 824, payroll direct deposits numbered 74167 through 74498, totaling $880,854.34. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 105676 through 105750, totaling $217,542.64. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 105751 through 105837, totaling $315,609.27, and a motion to ratify change order number 1 to the Rainy Park Pool Complex Improvements Contract.
Is there any item the council would like out for discussion? Seeing none, the consent agenda consists of items 1 through 9. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We now move to the regular agenda tonight, and the first thing up is an ordinance accepting a restricted fund, and this is from the Robert and Anna Neal Library Fund. With that, again, Joanna Bailey.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is an ordinance accepting the restricted donation to Neal Public Library from the Robert and Anna Neal Library Fund in the amount of $47,639. And per the terms of this fund, distributions are to be used for the enlargement and improvement of Neal Public Library. The only restriction upon the use is that they are not to be used for operational expenses. Staff recommends acceptance of these funds to construct 2 employee offices in the Heritage Edition of the library. Last year, employee workspaces were restructured and distanced to align with public health directives and guidelines. There was insufficient workspace available, so 2 employees were temporarily relocated into the library's large conference room. This was a stopgap solution that allowed additional staff to return to work so phased recovery of service could continue. Over a year later, the impact of the loss of this conference room is more keenly felt. The construction of 2 offices in the Heritage Edition will enlarge the facility's infrastructure and increase staff workspace capacity. If construction costs are less than the grant amount, then the remaining funds will be used to purchase office furnishings and possibly replace an indoor drinking fountain. If construction costs exceed the grant amount, the Friends of Neal Public Library will provide supplemental funding to cover the overage and purchase office furnishings. So in all instances, expenditures will be funded outside the library's operating budget. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions on this? Seeing none, do I hear a motion on this?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Laura, would you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 22-5, an ordinance accepting a restricted fund distribution donation from the Robert and Anna Neal Library Fund at the Inovia Foundation to be used for enlargement or improvement of the Neal Public Library and providing for other matters properly related thereto.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is an ordinance dealing with the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission, defining duties and doing some revisions. With that, we go to our city attorney, Laura McAloon.
Thank you, Mayor. So council, you have before you ordinance number 22-6, which would, if adopted, will codify all of the things that you have discussed as the city council over the last nearly a year, and that has been recommended to you by the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. So I'm just going to run through what the ordinance provides for, and then would be happy to take any questions. Councilmember Wright chairs the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee and was a part of all of the discussions that they had, so she may have some additional input as well. The first section amends Pullman City Code 4.95.030 to define more just more specifically how funds held in the Civic Improvement Fund can be used, and it makes it, states it in city law, the same provisions that are found in state law, but it also lays out a process for the City Council and the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission to each evaluate proposals for the expenditure of funds in the Civic Fund, or the Civic Improvement Fund, that are collected from lodging tax, and provides requirements for the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission of what they have to provide to you as the City Council when they are providing you written comments on a proposal. Those comments include an analysis of the extent to which the proposal will accommodate activities for tourists or increase tourism, and the extent to which the proposal will affect the long-term stability of the fund created under RCW 6728.1815. Failure of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee to submit comments before final action or passage of the proposal would not prevent the City Council from acting on the proposal. So that's all language that's currently found in state law and in Attorney General interpretations of the state law, but now this codifies it and puts it into city code to make it more accessible and easy for everyone, citizens and the LTAC, to address. It also specifically defines the long-held practice of providing discretionary lodging tax grants, and it establishes or simply codifies the process that you have always used, where you budget the amount to be appropriated from the fund for those discretionary lodging tax grant programs. And it lays out the process for the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee to accept applications for the use of those funds, evaluate those applications, and then provide you as a city council with a recommendation supported by the data that the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee used to make the recommendation. It also defines a specific process. Again, this is codifying what has been the practice for years, is that in the annual budget process, the city council would determine the amount to be appropriated for large, for annual festivals and events, such as Lentil Fest. And it simply puts it in, again, in city code, that that's the process. The recommendation from the LTAC was that you put a limit on the amount of that annual appropriation. And the feedback from the city council when that recommendation was discussed was to go ahead and put it in this ordinance. So it does expressly state that the appropriation annually for festivals and events shall not exceed 50% of the annual average revenue deposited in the Civic Improvement Fund. It, again, lays out a process in city code for awarding contracts for tourism promotion or for the operation of a tourism facility. And it simply specifies that it will be awarded by the city after a review and recommendation by the LTAC that brings this, the practice into compliance with what state law would require. It requires that proposed recipients of those contracts provide detailed estimates of how their services should be, how services funded with lodging tax revenue will result in persons traveling to Pullman for business or pleasure, and that any contract for the services shall provide for the monthly reporting of actual data, so that you will receive monthly reports from whomever you contract with to provide tourism marketing services or to operate a tourism facility such as a visitor center. The recommendation was that the contracts have a minimum initial term of 2 years and that they may be renewed for additional 2-year terms based on the review and recommendation of the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission, and that no more than 25% of the annual average revenue deposited in the Civic Improvement Fund shall be allocated to the annual funding of such contracts. And then finally, it defines what the process that you would use for allocating civic improvement funds to capital facilities. That's one of the eligible uses. So we've simply put in city code that they may be funded, and that funding for those capital projects should be appropriated by the city council through the budget process, but with the input and advice from the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission prior to the adoption of that budget. I'm going to pause here and ask if you have any questions on the changes to 4.95. Okay. We did go over it in detail previously, so I just want to make sure, though. Okay, so then in the next part of the ordinance adopts a new Chapter 1.50, which actually codifies the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission in city code, lays out the membership and term, and what to do if there's a vacancy. That's in 1.50.010. What will happen is that the new number of the commission will consist of 6 non-elected members of recognized fitness and statutory qualifications under a standard 3-year term, plus 2 city council members who are appointed to a 3-year term. And that those appointments will be made by the mayor with the consent of the council. And all members of the commission shall be voting members. Effective with the adoption of this ordinance, the current Lodging Tax Advisory Commission will be reconstituted and appointed as in accordance with these laid out terms to provide for staggered terms and continued rotation on the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission. So after this ordinance is effected, assuming council adopts it, 2 representatives of persons or entities collecting the tax will be appointed to a 1-year term. 2 representatives of persons or entities receiving grants or allocations of lodging tax revenue from the city would be appointed to a 1-year term. 1 representative of persons or entities collecting the tax would be appointed to a 2-year term, and 1 representative of persons receiving allocations or grants would be appointed to a 2-year term, and then the 2 city council members would be appointed for the 3-year term. So that provides for staggered appointments. This also provides for a term limit of 2 terms, 2 consecutive terms, provided past commissioners will be eligible for reappointment to the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission after a minimum of 1 year absence from the commission. The next section deals with their duties and actually specifically codifies again in city code what the duties of the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission are in relation to the use of lodging tax revenue. So it makes it consistent with state law and also clearly defines what will happen and how the commission will act, including the minimum criteria that they need to use in evaluating any application for one of the discretionary lodging tax grant applications. And so there are now, I think it's 7 specific criteria that will be applied. So anticipated number of nights, anticipated economic impact on Pullman restaurants, anticipated economic impact on Pullman retail, anticipated economic impact on the surrounding area and towns, likelihood of return visits to Pullman's by attendees, the length of time or number of days that the activity funded by the proposed grant is anticipated to occur, and then as applicable to a grant application, the historical or anticipated success and financial expertise of the activity to be funded, and that needs to be demonstrated by data, an actual or proposed budget, and anticipated or prior reported impacts. And then based on these minimum criteria, the commission will develop new scoring matrices to score the criteria, and those scoring matrices will be provided to the city council with their recommendations so that you can see exactly how the process was handled. And then the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission is also going to establish, or frankly reestablish, the application process and the eligibility criteria. So updating their documentation to match what this ordinance would provide for. There is a specific provision based on their recommendation that the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission would establish an application process and eligibility criteria for the funding of annual community events or festivals such as Lentil Fest or the 4th of July. So those are the events that you would also fund separately through the budget. So this would be done on a basis that's concurrent with your biennial budget adoption. And then it provides that the chairman has to be one of the 2 appointed city council members. That's in accordance with state law. And that they will also have an appointed secretary on their on their commission who shall keep minutes of each meeting. And that those minutes will be forwarded to the city administrator immediately after approval. So usually that's the next meeting. But that's not always the immediately succeeding meeting. And then the city administrator will provide copies of those minutes to the city council. It provides the specifics for when their meetings are held, 1 meeting each month. And they obviously have to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. A quorum is a majority of the appointed members of the commission, provided that no action can be taken on a request for use of lodging tax revenue unless there is an equal number of members representing those who collect the tax and those who are recipients of the lodging tax present and voting on that matter. That again is in accordance with the Attorney General's opinion. Provides for what happens if there's an unexcused absence, how a person who has 3 consecutive unexcused absences may be removed from the position by the mayor. Expressly provides for reports to the city council member in addition to the ones provided with the grant award recommendation. The 2 council members serving on the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission are now required to provide verbal or written reports to the city council on at least a quarterly basis. So that, the remaining is legalese as severability and effective date. Do you have any questions on these changes? I know they were discussed in December quite extensively, but I also recognize we have new council members.
And Pat, let me go to you because I know you've been serving on that committee and you might add in some comments to that, so.
Well, as we all know, change is never easy, and trust me, this was a difficult process at best, but we got through it thanks to all the help and expertise of Laura. I want to commend all of the members who participated in putting all of this together. It took us, 5 months maybe, 4 or 5 months at least. We had a few fits and starts because we didn't have all the right dates and times together, so we often would not have a quorum. So we managed to get through all of that. But I feel very comfortable with the work that was done putting all of this together. As Laura said, it's really codified now and tailored to what we're doing with it, as opposed to the way we were kind of following the rules before with the broad spectrum, if you will, of the RCW. And so this really does put it into much, much better, easier, black and white way to follow it. The other change, of course, that is coming about with that is the awarding of the tourism contract, which has been kind of in the past, that was a rollover activity, and that is going to be awarded on a biannual?
A minimum of 2 years for the initial term.
So we'll be working through that, as well as the fact that other major events like Lentil Festival and the 4th of July were always a line item in the city budget. And so we will be looking at those on a biannual basis, as Laura said, in alignment with the budget process. So actually tomorrow we'll be taking our first action to bring back a recommendation to council on funding the National Lentil Festival. So it'll be interesting to go through that process tomorrow. I already have verbal and written acceptance from all the members of the committee that they will be participating tomorrow. So that's good. I was worried that we might not have a quorum, but we do. And so sometime probably in the first meeting in March, did we decide? We'll be bringing back a recommendation to council on the Lentil Festival. But again, I do thank all the members of the committee, Jackie Alvarez, who is with the Courtyard Marriott Group, PJ Sanchez, who represents a recipient of funds, Charlene Jasper, also representing a recipient of funds, and Barbara Wachter, who is representing the Hilltop Motel organization. And Al Sorensen was very instrumental in getting a lot of this work done, and so I would like to thank him as well for the time and effort he put into this. And now welcoming our newest commission member, that would be Becky Dubin, and I'm looking forward to working with all of those individuals as well. And again, thank you, Laura. You did an absolutely Herculean task in putting this all together. So, yep, she did great. We couldn't have gotten through it without her. So, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Francis.
Thank you. So Laura, these are going to be addressed to you. I'm trying to understand the quorum piece, just because we've had challenges with quorum. If there's 8 members, do we have to have 5 there in order
Yes.
to have a quorum? So in that scenario, can you have, if you have a scenario where, because you have to have the same number of representatives that are receiving money as take in money in order to do a vote, can you have 5, but only 4 people vote as a part of something, or?
No, you would still have all 5 that are present. All members are voting members.
Okay, so what it means is if any 2 people from one of those groups isn't able to attend, then we can't achieve quorum.
Correct.
Because you'd only have one, and then 2 council members, a maximum of 4.
Correct. And,
Okay.
and a vacancy in either of those classes of members would also then put a hold on the processing of any of the discretionary lodging tax grants.
And
So that brings it into
because we have to have
accordance
all
with-
3 filled
Yeah,
in order to do any votes also.
yes.
Can you meet, or can you achieve quorum without having all 3 filled on both sides? And just,
Yes, because if you had 2 out of each category
Okay.
plus 1 or 2, 1 council member present, you would have quorum.
okay, great. So just the importance of those that are serving on this, that they are going to be there. It's going to be very critical. Thank you.
Any other comments? And if not, do I hear a motion on this ordinance?
Move to adopt ordinance 22-6.
I'll go to you for the second.
Second.
Okay. Laura, would you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 22-6, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pullman, Whitman County, Washington, relating to Titles 1 and 4 of the Pullman City Code, amending Pullman City Code Section 4.95.030, and Pullman City Ordinance number 81-27, 1981, adding Chapter 1.50 of the Pullman City Code, continuing the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission, defining duties and terms thereof, establishing criteria for the evaluation of proposed uses of lodging tax revenue, and other matters properly related thereto.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item number 3 is a resolution setting a maximum speed limit for a portion of State Route 27, something that council discussed here a while back, and of course it takes a while when you work with a state highway, try and figure out how to do it. With that, our Deputy Public Works Director, Clayton Forsman.
All right. Thank you and good evening. So as the mayor mentioned, this item is in regards to the posted speed limit on North Grand, on the north end of town. So on this screen before you, I know it's zoomed out a little, but just trying to get everyone orientated to where we're talking here. So you've got North Grand running north and south here. Down here would be Terraview. And up here would be Albion Drive, and then right about here is the North City limit line. This speed limit discussion stems from the Aspen Heights development, which I've highlighted in the red polygon right here in this vicinity. That development is accessed from Albion Drive, and as part of that project, a traffic impact analysis was required, and the developer provided that to the city, and that analysis showed that intersection improvements were required at the intersection of Grand Avenue and Albion Drive, so that's the red circle right here. Originally, a left turn lane was the recommended improvement for that intersection. However, after multiple discussions with city staff and Washington State DOT staff, it was determined that a roundabout would be the preferred alternative. This because the cost would be very similar to the improvements necessary for the left turn lane, and there'd be the benefit would be greater with a roundabout versus the left turn lane. So. And of course, Washington State DOT was involved because this is a state highway. So on this screen, I've just simply laid out the existing speed limits on North Grand. You know, as you're traveling north, it's 35, it turns to 45. That's the green there. That's right about Larry Street, just north of Larry Street. Then as you continue north, you're in the 45-mile-an-hour zone until you get north of Terraview and until you're, right about that Auto Body Supercenter location. And then it turns to 55 and it remains at 55 as you head north out of town. Early in the design phase of the roundabout project, a joint decision was made between the city, WashDOT, and the developer to look at reducing the speed limit on the approaches to that intersection, so just north and south of the intersection, and reduce it from 55 to 45. And so that's kind of shown here in the green. So just looking at, as people approach that roundabout, looking at a design speed for the roundabout of 45 miles an hour. This inevitably left a section of 55 remaining, which is shown in yellow south of the intersection. So again, multiple discussions with city staff and the state. It did not make sense to keep that 55 there, to have speeds slow down for the roundabout as they come into town, ramp back up and ramp back down again. So again, a joint decision was arrived at, and so that would change the remaining 55 to 45 as you head south. So that's shown here. Also, I'd like to mention that the council has brought this to staff previously, looking at the speed limit in this part of town, especially given the development that has occurred in the last 3 to 4 years. As you may know, changing the speed limit generally requires an engineering study, and the speed limit must be set within 5 miles an hour of the 85th percentile speed. That 85th percentile speed is the best indicator of a safe and reasonable speed. So that would be difficult given this stretch of highway and the existing traffic speeds that are out there today. However, in many ways, we were able to take a different approach here by using the roundabout as a catalyst to look at, to take another approach at looking at the speed limits in this area. And this is because, traffic's going to slow down as they enter and exit that roundabout. Naturally, you might be thinking 45 miles an hour seems awfully fast for a place to put a roundabout. So I'll take a brief moment to clear up any confusion that might exist in regards to that. So on this slide here, this is an example of another roundabout that's currently installed. It is on a state route. It is in the state of Washington. It's up near Medical Lake. The state route is going in east and west, so across the screen. And it intersects Craig Road here. This is actually a 55-mile-an-hour state route. And it remains 55 miles an hour as you head east and west for quite a few miles. So the way that this works is as traffic enters that intersection, they are slowed down to 15 miles an hour with advisory speed signs. And the concrete islands on the approaches are chicanes. And they're designed to kind of funnel traffic into that roundabout and slow them down to that 15-mile-an-hour speed as they enter and exit. So this will be very similar to the roundabout we're talking about on the north end of town. It'll be 45, and the chicanes are designed to slow traffic from 45 down to 15. So what are the next steps? Pending council's approval tonight, the next step would be to go ahead and submit the resolution to the Secretary of Transportation in Olympia. This is a required step anytime you're looking at changing the speed limit on a state route. That Secretary of Transportation has to approve that. That's a RCW. Along with that resolution, we'll also attach a copy of the letter that's in your packet tonight from Chief Jenkins, showing support for the speed limit change from the local law enforcement. We'll wait for approval, and then it will become active once the Secretary approves it, and it will become effective once the signs are installed And the plan is to have those signs installed by the developer when the roundabout is constructed. And that's scheduled for this summer. So in closing, I'll just leave you with this image. It's from your council packet. It's kind of hard to see on the big screen over here, but pretty good behind us. Again, it's a change from 55 to 45. On the left is existing, and on the right is showing the area that would change. And I'd be glad to take any questions.
Any questions of Clayton on this? Okay, since there's none, do I hear a motion on this resolution?
Move to adopt Resolution R7-22.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Laura, would you read the resolution, please?
Resolution number R-7-22, a resolution setting maximum speed limits on a portion of State Route 27, amending resolution number R-105-04, 2004, and providing for other matters properly related thereto.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Council.
Okay, we now move into the section of the agenda, the discussion items. And the first item to be discussed is the City Safety Program grant application for 2022. Once again, Clayton.
Thank you again, Mayor. So I would like to take this opportunity tonight to inform you about a grant program. It's currently open for applications through Friday, March 4th. The program is called the City Safety Program. It's administered through WashDOT. It awards federal highway safety improvement funds to cities and towns. The idea is to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes on city streets. And you do that by using proven countermeasures to help reduce those crashes. Historically, this grant program is offered every even year to cities, and then every odd year to counties. Staff previously submitted grant applications beginning back in 2018 and again in 2020, but unfortunately both of those were not awarded. Those previous applications both looked at upgrading traffic signals in town to increase their visibility and their operations to help reduce those crashes. The program's extremely competitive. During the last grant cycle, there were 190 projects submitted, totaling $127 million. However, there was only $33 million to award. So this kind of gives you some idea. This year, similar award amount, $35 million, so we expect it to be highly competitive again. So as part of that grant application, each city is required to prepare a local road safety plan. And that's a planning process used to identify and evaluate projects that ensure the highest priority safety needs are addressed at the highest priority locations. Only projects identified in that local road safety plan are eligible for the grant application. So that plan consists of the following key elements. First, a thorough evaluation of the 5-year fatal and serious injury crashes in the city of Pullman. Next, we look at identifying common factors that contribute to those crashes. And then we identify locations that have similar characteristics. Then we go ahead and we look at what are the proven countermeasures to help address those roadway network conditions, where are the highest priorities for those common factors, and then we use an engineering analysis to validate and verify each of the selected countermeasures. So currently we've been working with a consultant, DN Traffic Consultants, to help us with that local road safety plan. We expect the plan to be in the final form at the end of this week. And so far, some of the quick highlights are, there's about 60% of those fatal and serious injury crashes are occurring at intersections. They're intersection related. Also, 40% are involving pedestrians or bicyclists. So those will definitely be something we look at in the plan. Probably going to be looking at some type of traffic signal improvements to deal with those intersection related issues, and then probably some crossing improvements for some of those pedestrian and bicycle incidents. Again, we're currently working through that, but those are some of the initial indications. So one other thing, we've been strategizing on how to make our application more competitive and effective, just to kind of increase our odds of maybe getting an award this time around. We're hearing that smaller projects would help increase our chances. In 2020, we were in the $5 million range. 2020, we were just over $2 million. So we're thinking somewhere in the $750,000 to $1 million. We'll see where we end up, but trying to get that to a smaller, more manageable bite size that we would have a better chance to be awarded. So at this time, that's kind of what we're working on. We're just really here to let you know that and see if you have any input or direction. And if you like what we're doing here, we would bring this back next meeting with the grant application for your approval. It is due on March 4th, so that would be our last opportunity to bring this back. So.
Any comments from council on this, on their direction?
Third time's a charm. Let's get this one.
Okay. Yeah, Francis?
I like the fact that we're just, what you're looking at with the initial numbers are these intersections, and that it's not just vehicle, but it's also in looking at the bicycles. I know that there's, in the last couple of years, we've done some tests and actually brought people in around some of the trail safety. I'm thinking particular Stadium Way and Grand. That crossing there could be an easy lift, not a lot of expense in order to create some safety around there. So I think we have some projects that you definitely could identify there at the lower, as opposed to some that are bigger ones like under Grand there by Scout Park. I mean, which would be a big project that probably wouldn't be competitive enough.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Good luck on this one.
All right, thank you.
And I think we'll all look forward to it coming back. Again, another discussion item tonight is city property at 530 East Main. We've certainly received a number of emails on this particular issue, even though it's nothing that we're doing tonight, but I just want to make sure that when you present this, and then I know Laura's going to let us also know what the extent of what this council can do on this. So 530 East Main Street, once again, Clayton.
Thank you again. So first I'll provide some background on this discussion item tonight. Then I will turn the floor over to Jace Bankhead with Forza Development, who will join us virtually to present their project and their request tonight. Then we will, of course, both be available for council questions. So tonight's discussion is centered around recent development activity regarding the property at 530 East Main Street. So hopefully you can see the red polygon there off to the right. I think everyone's familiar with where we're at, but so regarding the recent development activity we've seen for this property, we've received 2 different developers' requests for pre-application meetings for the property. A pre-application meeting is something that RJ started about a year ago, and it's a service we provide where a developer can sit down with city staff, planning, building, public works, police, and fire, and present their project. It's an opportunity for them to ask questions and learn about what approvals or permits might be necessary for their project to be built in Pullman. So as it shows there, we had a meeting in September, and that developer was looking to tear down the building that is currently there and add a new drive-through coffee shop. Ultimately, that developer chose not to move forward with the project, so they did not purchase the property. Consequently, there was another meeting in January of this year with Forza Development, who's with us tonight, and they also are looking at tearing the existing building down and adding a drive-through coffee shop. So in between those first two pre-application meetings, the first developer that had approached the city provided some preliminary survey drawings to the city. And they were showing some discrepancies along the north property line. So we did some research and discovered that along that north property line there was a remnant piece of street right-of-way that was previously vacated. So that was kind of explaining the discrepancy that they had found. So I'll show that on the next screen here. And maybe I'll use the pointer here. So I'll point out that street, that former street right-of-way. So first in the magenta is the property at 530 East Main. And then up in this northeast corner, the existing street right-of-way, an unnamed street, is 25 feet wide, so from here to here. And that was vacated in 2014. And as is standard practice for street vacations, so 12 and a half feet, so half of that 25 feet goes to each abutting property owner. So the magenta square here went to the 530 East Main property, and then this blue area went to the property that abutted to the north, which happens to be the city of Pullman, former railroad right-of-way that we had recently acquired. So really the topic tonight is in regards to this blue square here. Again, it's about 12 and a half feet wide. It's been vacated. And we own that part still. So since the city was aware of this, when we had the pre-application meeting in January with Forza, we of course let them know that the city has some property along the north side of their property that abutted them. And obviously, we let them know that they could not use city property without council approval. Even if the previous owner had encroached onto city property, we can't allow that to continue with the new development. So the main reason for the discussion tonight is that Forza has determined, so the developer has determined that they really need that former piece of right-of-way, shown in blue, to move forward with their current plans. And in your packet, you'll see their formal request along with some drawings of their project and a traffic impact study they provided last week. And this it shows you a little bit more. This is an image that Forza provided in the packet. The red hatch is that same blue area. So it's relatively small. It's about 12 and a half feet wide and 56 feet long. But that gives you some context onto why they feel like they need that property. So the goal for tonight is to obtain some direction from council to staff on what are essentially looking like three options in regards to Forza's request. One option would be to sell the property. If that was a chosen option, then staff would work with the developer to come up with a purchase and sell agreement, bring that back. Another option would be to lease the property, so that would be in the form of perhaps a ground lease, which we could work with and bring back. And then obviously there's an option to retain the city property. And then the developer would choose what to do at that point. Also, I'd like to just point out real quick that this project is in the very early stages. Staff have chosen to bring this to council at the beginning of the project to seek your input and direction before the development advances any further. If council does choose to sell or lease the property, the developer would still have to go through the normal process to seek site plan approval, building plan approval. As part of that, we would look at any type of traffic study, and we would be looking at that to make sure that we agreed with it. So At that, I'd like to go ahead and turn this over to Jace, and again, we'll be available for questions.
Hi, I'm Jace Bankhead with Forza Development, and just wanted to check in to make sure the audio and video is working. Is it showing up on your end okay?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Appreciate a few minutes of your time this evening for joining you. I'm joining you tonight from Salt Lake City, where we're based. But Forza, our group, is a team of 8 folks, and we specialize in retail development and work throughout the Intermountain states. I'm going to share my screen just to show a few items as it relates to this project. Give me just a moment here to do that. With any luck, this will work properly. Are you able to see the screen I have up right now?
Yes, net lease retail.
This is a little bit about our history. Like I said, we are a team of brokers that have been in the industry for 20 plus years and focus on a lot of drive-through and a lot of fast food drive-through concepts. We've done over or nearly 250 of those in our history as a development team, and have come across, I think, you think about every issue that can come up these days, but there's always something new to learn. A couple of pictures of some projects we've done recently. You can see on the screen there, but this is kind of our bread and butter. This map shows, again, we're headquartered out of Salt Lake City. The bulk of our work is here in the Intermountain West. We try to stay out of California. There's some complexities there, but you can see the states we're developing in, and we love these areas. We're very passionate about what we do. We were approached by Starbucks back in late November, early December, after the prior developer that Clayton had mentioned had stalled out on this project. As you might imagine, Starbucks is very savvy and has a lot of data. They're very pleased with the Pullman market. It's been a good one for them. They also have some limitations in some of their other sites. And so they tasked us to work with them on this project and try to come up with a solution that would work for them. The project that we've got in front of you on the screen, and Clayton shared this image as well, is for a roughly 975 square foot building that would feature something that's kind of new for Starbucks, which is this, what they call a Y-style double drive-through, where you have 2 stacks of cars. It's kind of similar to what you see at like a McDonald's or Chick-fil-A, and then they queue into one. The advantage with this, as you might imagine, is you can create a lot more stacking and an alternating flow to keep cars moving in and out of the site very efficiently. And that's something that they feel strongly about, given their other offerings in the market there, that this is a better way to go. Just by way of what this building might look like, this rendering on the screen here is a similar concept, similar sized building that we're doing here in Salt Lake County that's near my home, but this gives you kind of an idea of how this goes. There's some parking stalls, there's pedestrian access, there's mobile order pickup, and then obviously the drive-through being a large part of the concept here of what we're doing. One of the things that was mentioned at our staff meeting that Clayton alluded to was just the concept of the traffic impact study and what this type of project would mean. And I did include that in the council packet. I'm hoping that arrived there and you've had a chance to glance through it. But kind of at a high level view, the traffic engineer, the current plan shows stacking for 16 vehicles. Typical Starbucks, they like to have 8 to 10. This double drive-through Y style gives them 16. And the traffic impact study shows that the probability of going over that 16 is quite low. It's about 14% chance of that occurring in the AM rush. And then we have some overflow. If we had any more than 16 cars, we could go up to 22 before we even start to encroach on the street or the drive aisle, with the probability of that occurring being in the low single digits, just slightly over 3% chance of that occurrence. So we've really tried to push this site plan or this drive-through stack deep into the project and create this double drive-through stack. And in the process of doing that, discovered there's this about 700 square foot piece of land owned by the city, that if we could acquire that and put it and make it part of this parcel would allow us to create this drive-through that will keep the traffic away from the street and keep things flowing as smoothly as possible in the site. So that's the scope of what we're here for tonight, is to request the opportunity to purchase that remnant piece of property. We understand that something kind of similar to that occurred several years ago with our neighbor to the east, kind of as a continuation of that vacated street. And we're kind of looking to have a similar outcome here. And appreciate the chance to visit, and I'm here to answer whatever questions you might have.
Any questions? Okay. Eileen McCall.
We'll take turns at this because I think my fellow council members all have questions. I'll dive right in. The traffic study, we've done traffic studies too, and has anybody coordinated these traffic studies? And what everybody asks me is, when was your traffic study done? It says 2 days in December, 2 days in January. Was this during the holiday period?
You know, I don't know in the December what dates he was up there. I could find that out from our traffic engineer, but the January dates were later in January. Again, I don't know the exact dates he was up there on site, but he did spend several hours from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., for example, on the morning traffic study, counting cars in person physically there at the site. So I believe it was a fair representation of normal business hours, normal functioning work week.
We are skeptical because we had 2 feet of snow on the ground, and the university and the public schools were not in session in most of December. So it would be difficult for just about any dates in December to have a representative count, because people simply are not in the downtown, especially when there's, like I say, 2 feet of snow. As good as our people do at clearing snow, people just don't get out and about under those kind of conditions. The stacking, you talk about traffic flow. We're not looking for flow in our downtown at the moment. We're looking for some tranquility, and we're looking for clean air, and I don't know that this gets us there.
Any other comments or questions?
No, Eileen addressed what I needed.
Okay. Francis.
So if I can just piggyback on the traffic study, what was determined as what you expected was the average rate per day, or what the average per year would be? Because in your numbers, I couldn't.
You know, I don't know that figure off the cuff. I'd need to go back and look.
Okay, because I was trying to compare it to Washington Department of Transportation. You know, their 2020 has a 6,600.
Mayor?
I'm sorry.
So I just want to remind the City Council that analysis of a traffic impact study, the site plan for the development of the property is not the role of the City Council. Okay. It is the role of Public Works and Planning as they process their site plan. So I want to caution you to be careful so that it doesn't look like you're treating any applicant for a development project differently than city code requires or state law. So the question before you for discussion is whether you want to sell the land or lease the land or do nothing at all. Development of the site is an administrative process that doesn't get handled by City Council.
Okay. So the discussion then, again, I know it was obviously part of a discussion, and especially with all the emails we've been receiving on this. So where's the council at as far as this piece of land? Again, a neighbor to the east, we did that sell a while back, and this would be a neighbor to the west with the same situation kind of thing. So where's the council on this one? We'll go to Ann Parks.
I guess I'll address this to Clayton. If we approve to the sale of this or lease, are we wholly committing to this particular project? Or just, I think you made mention at the end of your presentation that some of these issues that are already coming to us from our residents and that have been mentioned a little bit here. Will those be addressed at a later date as far as the actual project, or is selling or leasing this land also our approving the project unofficially? Does that make sense? That's
Sure,
what
sure. I
we
think,
need to-
I think we're, I'll say it another way, but I think Laura talked about it already. To answer your question, Ann, really the way it would work is this would give the developer a decision whether to proceed with the project or not. If they do proceed with the project, they would still have to get approvals from city staff, such as site plan and building plans. And we let them know at the pre-application meeting that in order to get a site plan approved, a traffic study would have to be performed, and we have to review that. This was submitted last week. We haven't reviewed it. So does that answer your question?
It does, that helps,
Okay.
thank you. I'm just, as several of us have alluded, we've been already receiving quite a bit of feedback, and I just wanted to make sure that the intent tonight is not misconstrued by our residents if we do approve lease or sale.
And again, this is a discussion item tonight.
Correct, sorry.
Just basically to give direction, because they'll come back to us if we say, okay, we'll go ahead and work out the details to sell this or lease it or whatever. Just want to make sure, I'm looking at Laura, just to make sure I'm right on that.
Correct.
Okay.
If it's a sale, we'd bring back a purchase and sale agreement. If
Right.
it's a lease, we'd bring back a ground lease.
Thank you.
And again, keep in mind the council did something similar to this with the neighbor next door. So just want to make sure that people are treated the same. So, any other comments on this? Okay, so from a standpoint of where you are at as far as selling or leasing or not, can you help Public Works in terms of where you're leaning? Again, we're not making a decision, we're showing basically where you're inclined, I guess. So, Becky?
I don't see any way that we can treat different businesses differently. I think we have to be consistent, and what we did with the armory was to offer to sell that land. I think consistency is important.
Okay. Francis?
So this is a difficult decision for council right now, because we're expecting to get information from our consultants related to the downtown, the a la carte that we choose from in order to set direction. And without saying that, we don't know if this is something that is considered highly prized land for us to be making direction on or not. So that's kind of where I'm having a challenge with, because they're within that context. Now I agree with Becky that historically what we've done is we have allowed it to be sold off. My biggest question in this is and we haven't, from the council, we haven't seen those potential recommendations, and whether there's recommendations that they're proposing us to do something with that land in a different way. Then, in other words, it's important for us to retain it.
Okay. Any other comments? Becky?
Yeah, I think for me, I've spent quite a few hours this week talking about this and trying to wrap my head around it. And what I understand is this, is basically, I think if what was coming before the council tonight, absent the emails we've received and the feedback and all that, if what we were told was there's a business that would like to occupy this area, and there's a parcel of land that we have traditionally handled this way, should we continue to traditionally handle it this way because there's no value to that land, to the city? What should we do? I think for me, that helped, when I came to that understanding, that helped me kind of wrap my head around it, and I just wanted to offer that.
Well, yeah, following up on Francis's concerns and mine as well, both the BDS study and the Welsh Comer preliminary materials indicate this as a key touch area between the downtown and the river and the walkways and the trails. They indicated as a very important part of the puzzle. And until we see more of how the puzzle goes together, I don't know that we should make a decision on this. If if we had a full plan in place and it indicated what BDS strongly recommend, or I mean Welsh-Comer strongly recommended or whatever, then we'd have some better information to go on. But it definitely, I mean, there's a yellow arrow that says this area is important in both of those studies. So that weighs heavily on my mind.
Pat?
Well, I agree that we need to look at the traffic aspect more thoroughly, and certainly, that was the same question that I had. Was that a legitimate time frame, December, January, to really do a full review of, what we'd be looking at? I also agree with Councilmember Dubin in that we have to be consistent in how we're looking at treating this. Now, 2014, we had the kind of the twin piece right there that was involved with sanctuary, and they didn't ask us to do anything differently than what we're being asked to do right now. So I feel like, at least in my mind, that was somewhat of a precedent that was set. And I think we need to be consistent. We need to be accountable for what we're doing. And as Laura pointed out, it's not in our purview to determine the type of business or the nature of the business that's going in there, unless it's identified somewhere in the RCW as to the nature. But that would be my thought on it. What time frame, Clayton, would we be looking at in terms of a more in-depth traffic study?
Well, I think the biggest thing is Forza kind of would like to get some direction before they go forward. So really, they haven't made a site plan application yet. And that's why this is important to bring at the beginning, because it's part of their due diligence. And Jace, maybe you want to add to this on whether they move forward and purchase the land, because they're in a purchase agreement, sell agreement to purchase that land.
We are under contract with the current owner of the property to purchase that. Obviously, getting a site plan that works for our end user, as well as the planning department and the city requirements, is a key part of our due diligence. We feel like this piece of land gives us the ability to make this project work as smoothly as it can, and I think having that allows for the best outcome from a traffic perspective, relative to keeping cars off of the road, stacking into the road, or something along those lines. So certainly our desire is to acquire it and to loop it in. I think from Clayton's comments, it sounds like this is kind of a recent discovery that this remnant piece existed. Certainly it was new to us upon our discussion with him on the 5th of January. But if, certainly there's a decision that needs to be made and that you're discussing, but if for whatever reason that doesn't work, then you just have to come back and decide if we can plan around this piece and move forward, or what the implications of that are. I'm not really able to answer whether that changes much. We do think that this piece would allow us to create the least impact in the community relative to traffic issues.
Megan?
So what I'm hearing you say is that would help you make the Y-shaped and the stackability model more efficient. If you didn't have it, it could impact the model that you're saying has worked in the past and what you're anticipating in terms of the cars.
Yeah, I think if I understand your comment, if you look at the site plan that was in the packet that kind of had the red crosshatch, you'll see that the top lane of the drive-through, that's kind of the furthest north, it has about 1/2 of a car, so maybe 6 or so feet worth of space that kind of encroaches onto this piece of city land. If we're not able to acquire this land, then we would need to redesign the drive-through in a way that likely would need to push it south so that we're not encroaching onto the property in question here. And if you look at the site plan, anything that shifts south is more likely to push things closer to the road. Whether or not that changes the viability of the project, I don't think we can really make a comment on that right now because we don't know what that might look like. But the thought was, if we keep everything as far north and as deep into the site as we can, that allows for the most flexibility before that starts to be, something that would cause a concern off-site relative to traffic.
Okay.
you.
Eileen?
I guess I have another question for Clayton. If we sell this property, what happens to those 8 parking places that are seen there, that are city-owned? That's public parking there.
So basically, the way I look at those is the former developer likely encroached on the railroad right-of-way probably at the time that was built. So those aren't really technically marked as public spaces today.
But yet they are public places.
There's technically not a legal access to them unless you come from the railroad side. Does that make sense?
In other words, it's a bit of a mess.
Exactly. There's not a public street to get to them or a public access way through their property.
Who owns those parking spaces? The owner of the parcel that's for sale right now?
Technically, we own those because of the way the survey shows, but
Okay.
it was encroached on likely without our knowledge or the railroad's knowledge at the time if it was railroad property. So.
Is that the last section of right-of-way that has not been
Yeah,
moved over to
that
some
old street
owner?
right-of-way ended halfway through this parcel. So it doesn't go any further to the west. This portion does not. We vacated all of it with the 2014, and it went across the sanctuary. It's kind of 2 lots wide. Went across those 2 lots, and this property is on 2 lots as well, and it went into the first lot. And that was the end of that platted right-of-way that we found in 2014. So this is a last little, it was all vacated.
Yeah, Mayor, I can provide some more of that historical.
Okay, please.
So when Cold Days Properties came in to redevelop the armory and put in the sanctuary, the current city staff had no idea that this right-of-way was there. It appeared, based on our research, it appeared to be a remnant from a replatting of the original town of Pullman that was simply left and wasn't, it showed up in their title search as being right-of-way, but it certainly wasn't any area that the city had used for decades. The property that the city did own, they bought from the railroad, and where that parking is that Councilmember McCall pointed out, but that parking is not legal parking. The city simply has not required people to move. But in order to get there, as you can see, they're technically trespassing onto the Cold Days property in their parking lot. So this little sliver, this 12.5-foot sliver, was actually offered at the same time to the Happy Days Corporation, the current owner, and they purchased the part, they paid for the part that was vacated to them. They had no choice on that. They were not a party to the petition to vacate because we were able to do it with just the city and the Cold Day properties, but they did not want to spend the additional money to buy that additional 25 feet by 12. And the city continued to allow them to keep the parking lot there, knowing that you can't adversely possess against a city. So it wasn't right-of-way that's ever been used, at least in the history we could find, by the city.
Eileen?
So the trail access that we recently built there is no public, you're technically trespassing when you go to use that trail access?
No, that is on the city-owned land.
But to get to it, you have to cross the private property, or what will presumably be private property from here on out.
Yeah, that parking there, that's simply an informal arrangement between the Colday Company to allow those parking spaces to be there, but they're not designated, it's not one of your designated downtown parking lots.
But Eileen, are you asking about the cut in the parking that allows access to the trail?
Yes,
Right above that
yes.
diagonally parked? dark
Recently
car?
improved, spent money on it.
That is on city property.
But how do you get to it?
You should be walking.
You're on the trail, yeah.
But to leave the trail at that point, you have to go across private property.
No, council member. You have the cut through, you walk along the city property. The green is city property.
See what I'm saying?
And you do have your mic on, right? Okay.
I think that's what she's saying. You can walk behind those buildings, come out at Spring, at the YMCA building on Spring.
Okay. Got another question from Francis. Okay.
Mine is just, with the discussion, it has actually cleared up and helped me understand better the history of the lot and the fact that the city has previously offered this piece previously, and that this is essentially an island along this entire strip as the only piece that hasn't been. Then with that understanding, I would agree either moving toward a lease or toward a purchase. I prefer a lease, but just because I don't like to give up property, but that's personal.
Do I hear other leaning towards any particular direction here?
I agree with Francis in that the precedent of the way this adjacent right-of-way has been treated and the subsequent offering of the same parcel to the current owners, it does appear that we need to stay consistent in this particular matter. And so offering it for sale or lease, it looks like, I mean, I think it's something we should do.
Okay. I've heard from Pat on that. Megan, are you leaning in any particular direction on this?
I'm still struggling. I know that we need to separate what the public has clearly said to us, and I understand the consistency and the precedent, and that we can't comment on the type of business, but, I mean, to me, this is a drive-through business that is causing concern about traffic, and I just don't feel comfortable at this point with the information that we have to say, yeah, we need to do that.
Okay. Becky?
Clayton, I just want to clarify, the city will be doing a traffic study of its own, correct? Like we're very, very preliminary.
So we would require the developer to submit a traffic study, which they've done that informally. Like I said, they haven't started the site plan and made a formal application, but they're trying to be transparent, and they knew this would probably come up today, so they were proactive. As site plan works, we would require them to submit the traffic study to us as part of that, and we would not approve the site plan unless we were in agreement with what that traffic study, so we would review it.
Right, and thank you. I guess I just wanted reassurance that we're very early in the process and that if there is a problem, which I've just got to say, a couple other Starbucks in town there's a problem. And so this resistance towards that, I think, is very natural from the community. Like, we are out into the streets. I pick up my groceries at Walmart, every Saturday morning, and I go by the long line into the street from that Starbucks there. So I mean, that makes sense to me, but also I'm aware that we're at a very beginning of the process, that we have our trusted city staff working for us, and that's actually not even what we're deciding tonight, is my understanding.
I know a number of people have seen the traffic also on Stadium Way from that other one. Okay. That's why there was a concern on it. So I'm hearing that from several that to look at lease and sale to be consistent with what has been done before and the fact that it was offered before to a previous owner, the one that's still there. So, and I'm hearing some hesitancy as well. So, again, we're not making a decision tonight. Eileen, did you have additional comments?
I just encourage everybody to go down there and walk the site. If you haven't, go down and walk the site and look at where that trail access is, and think if we want to give that up, or how we want to manage it, how we want to help advise city staff to guide this process. But you got to walk the property. I mean, and we need to get some consistency. We need to be able to check the veracity of some of these traffic studies, because as Becky pointed out, we see the lineup on Stadium Way from the Starbucks. We see the lineup on the former Hood Drive on the other Starbucks. So, and that's narrow and very construed. If you drove it the other day, I was right behind you.
Yep.
And I strongly encourage everybody to go walk that property.
But I don't know if Clayton has gotten the direction that he needs right now. And Laura, any other further clarifications? Because I know we can't make a decision, but basically.
Well, actually, Mayor, you can absolutely provide the direction. It's a regular meeting. There isn't any
Okay, I just want to make sure
limitation on action.
because it did come under discussion item. I
Yes.
want to make sure that we're
Yes.
okay with that.
But there can certainly be a motion or just consensus to provide Public Works with direction on how to proceed.
Get us some better data. Get us some balancing data.
Well, but I don't know that we can do
But
that.
I don't think.
Councilmember, can I ask what type of data?
Well, Welsh-Comer says they've already done a traffic study there. Can we look at their data?
The traffic study
It's not our purview.
is not
Okay, well,
part of what the city
can we
council
encourage
is.
them to see if they can get some consistency between these?
So what the city has to do is follow its standard development guidelines, the same development guidelines that are used for every other development application in the city. So the application, if and when it comes in, will be processed exactly the same as any other application.
So essentially tonight, we have to make the decision, or would approve, they would appreciate the decision whether we're going to sell or lease or not. And again, to be consistent. Okay, Ann?
This is just a big example of where the city council is squeezed between the entity of the private business wanting to come in and the city and the state codes. And I really want the public to understand that you can hear in all of us that we are not supportive, perhaps, of this project, of this particular project, because of the vehicle traffic. I hope you can all hear that. But as our attorney has made clear, that is not our decision tonight, and that's not in our purview. We can't. We legally cannot. So I just want the public who are here and who are listening and watching to understand that we are not trying to not hear you or do what you would like regarding this project. It's not that. We have to make a decision about a part of the parcel, not about the business and its intent. So we're all feeling very
And again, we're not taking
squeezed.
public testimony at all. This is a discussion with the council, so I just want to make sure that's very clear. So if somebody would like to make a motion about either selling or leasing, we can at least find out where the council stands, because we did hear from Laura that we can do that, so. somebody wants to make a motion, we can go from there. And if nobody wants to make a motion, then we'll just sit there and we can move on. But, because we do have some new business to come up tonight too. And I'm not hearing anything. So as a consequence, council's not making a decision. We've heard a couple of people saying that be open to lease and to sell. Again, to be consistent with what has happened with neighboring property there.
I think I would be in favor of the second option that Clayton gave us in that report, and that's to negotiate a ground lease agreement between the city and Forza, which would be drafted by the city attorney and brought forward to council for approval. And given that parameter, is that where we would be able to see more thorough, gathered and developed information that would offset or mitigate some of the issues that we're looking at for traffic, as well as the safety factor? I mean, that really should be our number one concern is the safety piece. So if we can work within those parameters, I would be willing to bring that forward as a motion.
And Clayton said yes on that one, so.
Yeah, typically, if we have clear direction that council is in agreement on a ground lease, then my recommendation would be that, well, really, I would talk to Jace, and I guess, Jace, what would you think about that? As far as timing, typically what we've done in the past, Jace, is we've worked through the site plan, and I think that might be what Pat's alluding to here, is we work through the site plan and get the project to an approvable state before we bring the ground lease back, and then we would have some of those items.
I think I would want to probably get a little bit of feedback from other members of my team. I think one issue with that comes to mind is that the next steps as far as submitting the site plan and so forth, which we're eager to do, but those steps are associated with a pretty high level of cost and commitment to the project, and it would be helpful before we engage with that level of work to kind of know, like, if we do this, there's a ground lease scenario or a purchase or some kind of a scenario versus ambiguity of, if we're doing all that work and then all of a sudden the council says, we're not going to do anything with the land or whatever. And does that answer the question you were asking, Clayton?
I think so.
So Pat has made a motion of a possible lease. Is there a second on that for discussion?
Can I get clarification? Pat, was your motion to move toward a ground lease, or was the motion to delay until after more information with the ground lease? I'm just, clarification.
Well, I don't think we can, if we don't negotiate something, whether that be a sale or a ground lease, are we going to get the information that we need? I mean, to make a good, safe decision.
And again,
I'm trying to understand, because Laura, I think you've been very specific in what we can and can't do, and so I'm trying to
because it will
merge
be at
those together.
departmental level after this.
I interpreted Councilmember Wright's motion as directing staff to negotiate a ground lease, which we would bring back to you for your final approval. But again, details about site plan approval, traffic impact studies are processed through the Public Works and Planning departments, not through the City Council.
Okay. Go back to the next thing. Do we have a second on Pat's motion?
I'll second Pat's motion.
Okay. Further discussion? Any further discussion on that? And I don't see it. So we'll take a vote on that motion and see where we're at. So all those in favor of negotiating the ground lease, say aye.
Aye.
And we'll probably need to have hands raised on that. So those in favor, 1, 2, 3, say aye. Those against, say aye.
Aye.
We've got
Aye.
3 on that. So obviously, it goes nowhere.
Actually, Mayor, you break the tie.
You break the tie.
Thank you.
Motion.
I've remembered those things on the day. And that's probably why somebody else isn't here tonight. So with the situation it is, to balance what we've done before with the neighbors, I will vote yes in favor of negotiating a ground lease. Okay? Mike Urban.
Thank you. Before we moved on to the next item, I just wanted to touch on something that was discussed here at the council level, and that's the Welch-Comer project. Phase 1 is well on its way, and we do expect a on-time return later this summer to update council with the items that you were discussing, specifically Councilmember McCall and Councilmember Benjamin.
Okay. With that, we now move to new business, and Sean Colts has a presentation to make to us tonight.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Wanted to bring one item to Council's attention as new business, and that is some good news. WashDOT has notified us, as well as Whitman County and the Palouse RTPO, that there is funding available for a freight study, a freight alternative route study, specifically for Whitman County and City of Pullman. We've drafted a purpose and needs statement for that study, and I'll read that here quickly. The purpose and need of the study is to reduce pass-through freight travel with the Pullman downtown vicinity, to facilitate the proposed downtown revitalization plans and serve a regional need to connect travel between US 195 and US 95. The outcomes will also serve to inform the county and local comprehensive plans. The study will provide practical strategies that will update previously proposed highway capacity improvements. So this is a discussion right now that is just getting kicked off with WashDOT to say, this is an important element of downtown Pullman as well as Whitman County. And we'd like to focus the study funds that are available on this particular issue. So on a preliminary discussion basis, we pitched to WashDOT to study several elements. One is the north bypass, another is the south bypass. Another that was brought to the attention of WashDOT by the county was the Kirkendall and Sand Road bypass option. There's a central option that I'm listing up here tonight, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in another slide. There are other options to be determined by a consultant. This would be a consultant-led study, as well as an option of signage, routing, lane configurations, and technology upgrades within the existing network. However, when we proposed that list of options, the WashDOT official in charge of the funding noted that practical and fundable solutions are a WashDOT priority, and I'm quoting this, and are a critical element of advancing the proposed freight alternative route study, and that the north and south bypass options are not fundable. So that's the direction we got back from WashDOT. So in response to that, we wanted to bring up an alternative that first surfaced as we were doing the downtown master planning work. And that was what was conceptualized as what's called the central bypass. And if you look at this graphic, effectively, that central bypass would tie into Davis Way to the west of Grand. And then effectively change the configuration of the intersection there downtown to have one main intersection with Grand, and then route across the South Fork of the Palouse River in 2 locations, and then tie back in at Davis Way. So I wanted to bring this to council's attention, especially as we're very early on in the conversation. This freight study that WashDOT has funding for, the first discussion with that in a formal setting will be at the Palouse RTPO TAC meeting, or the Technical Advisory Committee meeting next week. And so we've just learned in the last few weeks this funding is available, and so we're in preliminary discussions with WashDOT to advance that study. It'd be great to get the funds and do some work with those funds and see if we can find a solution to route some of that pass-through freight traffic that currently goes through downtown. But this is one of the options we wanted to bring to the table, especially in light of WashDOT giving us feedback that the north and south bypass options, they will not allow us to study those options with this funding. So with that, wanted to offer a chance to ask questions and go from there.
And again, this is all funded by WashDOT if they approve to study it, correct?
That's
So-
correct. And so they've not finally approved those funds by any means. They've brought it to our attention that funding is available, and they're considering the use of those funds for this freight study.
City Administrator Mike Urban.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council again. When Sean brought this discussion item to me that WashDOT was, in this particular meeting, not interested in studying the north and the south bypass, I knew this was a council goal. It has been a goal for a long time, and it had been heavily worked on. So Sean chased this through different areas through WashDOT as well, and was hearing the same tune up and down the way. So in absence of not having an alternative to study for this particular funding and just having WashDOT focus on the Sand and Kirkendall Road, we went back to some old work through the BDS plan and some of the work that Welch Comer had actually done for them and found this central option. So proposing it for a study doesn't commit us to anything, and it's allowing the state to use their money to come up if this is a viable solution or not. It doesn't eliminate our foothold on the north or the south bypass. We just need to start working with our delegation to find out if that is truly what's going to happen. They're not willing to fund something like this, but this is an option that we believe that could be studied. It's got value to weigh against the county option as well, but I don't want to lose track of that north or the south. And I can assure you, Sean made a lot of phone calls on my request to make sure this wasn't just one person at DOT having a particular opinion.
So tonight, any other questions on this? So tonight, you're just basically asking council approval to go ahead and submit this to WashDOT for their look and to see if they'll do a study on it.
And the next steps for this, if it does get approved by WashDOT, again, would be the TAC meeting at the Palouse RTPO next week, and then there would be formal recommendation coming out of the TAC meeting to the policy board of the Palouse RTPO, and that policy board meeting is March 15th. So this is all moving fairly quickly. We've only learned about this funding availability in the last few weeks, so we're trying to be responsive, and hopefully we can get some funding.
Okay. Any further comments? And I assume, Laura, we'd just do a motion on this to go ahead and submit the application?
Correct.
Okay. Do I hear a motion on it?
I move we submit it. I think it's a great option for our downtown.
Yeah. Okay. Move in second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Any other new business to come before the council tonight? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Move in second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?